Chad Sanderson is our guest today. Chad is an award-winning sales, marketing, and business strategy consultant. I can't even talk today. Sorry, Chad. I'm going to start over. Today's guest is Chad Sanderson. Chad is an award-winning... Did you get something? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm getting lag. You're popping in and out.
Oh, all right. Hang on one second. Let me check something. No, we don't want lag, man. You know what? I might have to switch to another signal. If I lose you, I'll call you right back. All right, how's that? Chad? Better? Nope. Yeah, you better? Better now?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. All right. Good deal. Sorry about that. I'm glad you pointed that out early. No lags. All right. Let's hit it one more time. Sorry about that. Today's guest is Chad Sanderson. Chad is an award-winning sales, marketing, and business strategy consultant with more than 20 years of proven results in driving revenue growth, facilitating market expansions, and building high-performance teams. Chad is managing partner of ValueSelling Associates, where he's a sought-after and trusted advisor who helps global companies optimize sales across markets and verticals and drive predictable revenue growth. Before joining ValueSelling Associates, Chad spent 11 years as an executive in the digital advertising space. He has consulted with and enabled many major brands, including Adobe, Verizon Wireless, eBay, Microsoft, Chrysler, and the Minnesota Vikings, just to name a few. And Chad credits the ValueSelling Framework methodology for his ability to consistently exceed quota. Within months of applying the formula, he closed his first $1 million deal. And since then, he's trained his sales and marketing teams in the ValueSelling Framework and exceeding their ability to deliver record-setting results quarter after quarter. Chad, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I will first want to get this out of the way. We're in COVID, so where are you in the world today as we're recording this?
I am at home, which is in a town called Castle Rock in Colorado. It's about 20, 30 minutes southeast of Denver.
Okay. Oh, that whole area is gorgeous. I especially love Boulder, which I guess is a little bit further away from you, but gorgeous area all around.
Yeah, I've been in Colorado about 20. Yikes! Has it been 20 years now? 20 years, and can't imagine being anywhere else. It's just a perfect blend of outdoor weather, all of it. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we took the family out there a couple years ago. Went to Denver first, and then drove to Cheyenne and did that whole Frontier Days. So we just got to drive all over the area and experience life as cowboys used to see it or whatever, right? With our fake cowboy hats, we look like when they were real, but we look like the urban cowboys. So always a good time, right? When the city slickers and all that. Yeah. So let's talk about value selling for a little bit. It's described as a simple process to manage the conversation between prospects and customers, right? And develop a mutual understanding regarding how you and your organization can add value to the buyers and their businesses. So let's start with these words, simple process. So yeah, I've been through a lot of these training methodologies, and I know they can kind of get complicated fairly quickly. So how is value selling easier to use, first and foremost?
So, yeah, it's a good question. And I've been through most of them as well myself, right? And there's good things in all of them. I wouldn't dare to speak ill of the competition. What I found most effective as a practitioner, carrying a bag myself and running teams, was that a lot of the things that are out there were the what to do. Like do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, and then you should be able to close a deal. What it lacked often was how. How do I do that? How do I manage a conversation? How do I uncover what is valuable to someone else? How do I differentiate my solution in the eyes of the buyer? And value selling is a simple tool set. It's literally a qualification formula and one tool we call the value prompter. You think of it more as a communication GPS. It's more about where am I in the conversation? What questions do I need to ask to get the information that I'm lacking so that I am consistently focused on the buyer or prospect's view of the problem, and more importantly, their view of what is valuable so I can connect to it rather than attempting to get them to come to my way of thinking. So it's a very simple tool set, and it's a conversational dynamic backed up with a tool called the Value Prompter that allows you just to understand where you are in a conversation and be able to map it out. Once you've dealt with and understand kind of the parlance that we use, the language that we use, it really is all about application and just practicing the conversational dynamic.
Got it. Now, another thing I read about value selling is that with the conversational framework, you were calling it, that it helps you compete confidently on value and not necessarily on price. We're using a different time-tested methodology that you guys have said it's been proven for decades. I love that because competing on value is something I've been personally interested in for a long time, because most sales people like myself, whether you're selling a product or a service, you go into conversations knowing that the person's going to try to beat you up on price, right? And hating that feeling and going, I want you to know that we're bringing value to the table. And people are like, yeah, whatever. I just want to know, give me your best price, sharpen your pencil or what have you. So how do you change that conversation, Chad, where people aren't, the seller's not defensive and immediately thinking they're just going to go straight to the last page and look for the price?
Yeah, so it's all about focusing on and understanding that you don't create value. Like if I'm selling for Acme, when I show up at a meeting, I have zero value in the customer's eyes, right? It's not about what I think is valuable. We bring salespeople in, we train them on, hey, look at how cool we are, look at what our product can do, look what our solutions can do, and then we unleash them on the world, and we're surprised when they walk into a call and all they want to do is talk about them. What value selling enables is the ability for you to consistently uncover and connect to what's valuable to the prospect. So first and foremost, we do it by understanding, what we call it a business issue, but what's the time-bound, quantifiable thing they have to accomplish to enable their organization to achieve its overriding objective, right? So a CMO could be tasked with increasing leads across digital channels by 20% this year, right? That could be something that a CMO is tasked with when the organization is focused on, say, a 25% increase in total revenue growth. That'd be some of the CMOs focus on. So we want to ask them, what do they think is getting in the way of them achieving that? So we just start to ask them, what are the problems that they're having? We ask open-ended questions to get them to talk so we can hear it from their perspective, hear their language. But then we use probing questions to challenge their thinking, to add problems to this set that they probably hadn't thought of before or didn't think were in some way related. This is where we start to demonstrate our expertise, our insight, but we do it by asking questions. Then we ask them, what's the optimal solution look like to you? Tell me what you're looking for. And we listen again, what they're telling us. We listen to their language. We want to be able to confirm back in their own words what they're telling us. And then once we've done that, once we've asked those probing solution questions to add elements of a solution they maybe hadn't thought of before, we start to ask them, how would they quantify the impact to the organization of being able to solve those problems? So for example, in that CMO example, if CMO has to increase leads across digital channels by 20%, and they say, I have huge attrition rate in terms of people coming in through digital channels. Okay, so how would you quantify the value of one customer? If you could get one more customer to come through those digital channels, what does that mean revenue-wise for the organization? Oh, well, let's say it's a mid-sized company. Oh, it's $1,000 a month in ARR for us because we're a SaaS company. Okay, all right. So if you could get 10 customers, that's $10,000 roughly a month is what you're telling me. And so that's, $120,000 a year or better. So I'm only selling you something that costs $65,000. Wouldn't you spend $65,000 to get repeatable year-over-year revenue increase? So it gives us the ability to understand and tie and uncover what they find valuable and how they would quantify it. That then gives us a negotiation point to say, okay, this isn't about price. We're focused on the outcomes that you want, and the outcomes that you want provide this type of value to the organization. So that value prompter, that conversational GPS, if you will, allows us to ensure that we're having those conversations, uncovering enough problems and elements of the solution we can uniquely provide to then have them tell us what they think is valuable to their organization so we can then negotiate from there.
I think that's really important for people to think about. then it still becomes a challenge, though. I've found this a lot in web design, for example. I started in the early days of web design when it was like shooting fish in a barrel, like I used to call it, because it was a mystery science and people didn't know what it cost. And so they would say, well, how much for a website? And sometimes we were like, $10,000, and they're like, okay, or more, and it's so, and then the prices started to come down as things became a commodity, right? Yes. And web design and it's graphic design and so many other fields, right? So the challenge is, and you mentioned the word challenge a couple of times, is to identify again how that customer is going to benefit from your solutions. And if you know going in that you're not the guy who does a website for $2,000, you're more at 10,000 plus, then you're going to need to be able to justify that cost. If they say, yeah, we are looking to make we could stand to make $120,000, and okay, cool. A $10,000 investment is a chump, no problem, right? But if they come back and say, yeah, but we only budgeted $5,000, then what do you do? Is there a way to kind of, again, manipulate the conversation, or at least convince that person that you're worth spending twice what they had originally budgeted?
Yeah, so there's a concept that we use called kind of access to power, right? And there's one of our core principles: you can't sell to somebody who can't buy. So ideally, we want to get to somebody, we want to start talking to someone who has the ability to realign budgets. I always used to tell my teams when I was running teams, and I'm sure if anybody's listened to it, they will think fondly on these conversations. I always say that budget is a phantom objection. If somebody's coming to you and say, we only budgeted $5,000, that's great. But what about the outcomes that you're talking about? Are they greater than what that one individual could provide on their own? Is it a big enough return to the organization that it's worth potentially reallocating other capital budget elements to the new initiative? It's all about understanding what is the organizational objective. What role does each individual in the organization play in order to enable that overriding objective? And then showing them that you can solve multiple problems for multiple people, which increases the amount of value you can provide for the organization. Now, I understand that, especially in the time of COVID, everybody's going, how our budgets are cut, our budgets are frozen, things are slow. Totally understand that. There is such a thing as good business, and there is such a thing as bad business. So the most powerful sales organizations have no problem qualifying out as much as they qualify in. So I want to dequalify. I want people that aren't in the ideal customer profile, aren't in the segment where we're going to be able to generate the right amount of return for them. I don't want to spend my time there. I want to spend it with organizations that are investing in or understand that this could be an opportunity for revamping an organization. We experienced the same thing in my business when COVID hit in February, March. Everything screeched to a halt. Mm-hmm. We had people that were like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Contracts that had been signed were like, hey, we have to delay. Things that were in the pipeline, all of a sudden we're like, well, we don't have any money. And there's a definite difference between organizations that once they've gone through that initial reaction process, they actually go, you know what, this could be a really good time to invest in our people and in our approach. And then the outcomes, you have to go back and revisit what could the potential outcomes be, because now the environment's changed. But inside of that value prompter tool set that we teach them, it becomes very easy to understand where they lose information, or information that they once had known is no longer relevant because of changing market or environmental conditions, as it will be. One of the things I always do up front is just say, even if I'm selling a commoditized product, if all you're concerned about is price, we're not the right people to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
the first things I put out there.
That's great. And, like you said, you kind of have to just stand your ground, right? And I've been in that position before where, especially as I said, as web design got, more complicated and our prices for a while started going up and up and up. And then people started asking for the price to come down and down and down. And we were like, wait a second, we can only go so far. And our threshold kept going up. So what we used to walk out the door for $2,500 or whatever, we're like, nope, now it's a minimum of 5 or 10 or 20, right. 30. And, that's how big companies get bigger, because they refuse to do quality work at the cheapest price. That's
right.
Often
you get
the
what
case.
You pay for.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you get what you pay for. And I would much rather have him, and this is part of kind of the approach, is I'd much rather have somebody who's invested in really making sure I'm solving as many problems as I potentially can than somebody who's just taking an order. Because that's not a relationship that's going to sustain any longevity, right? It's going to be, I probably wouldn't even remember the name of the individual who just took the order. But if somebody takes the time to really talk to me and understand what are the problems I have and then help figure out, hey, there's these, if you have these problems, we know from our experience, you probably also have these challenges as well. And start to really put together something that's going to have much bigger impact. That relationship will last not only through the sales process, but throughout people's careers, right? We have a lot of repeat customers. We call them repeat offenders, but people that have come back and brought us into other organizations because of the results that they have seen. And when it comes to selling something that's either on the high end and extremely unique and requires a premium, we have customers that fall into that category. We also have customers that sell paper cups. Like you can't get much more commoditized than paper cups.
Sure.
And they were able to increase margin and deal size by using this approach. So it's about making sure you're understanding the individual that you're talking to, their perspective of the world, and how to connect what you can do for them to help them achieve those outcomes.
Okay, so I'm impressed. What are you guys working with? Dunder Mifflin, for the paper cups? Michael Scott?
No, it's actually it's not my account. It's one of my business partners' accounts. But yeah, I mean we've got customers that sell everything from paper cups to oil and gas to manufacturing, healthcare. We have customers that sell biospecimens to universities, which means they sell dead cats.
Oh wow!
Right. So so it is all about the fact that in every sale, people buy from people. And if I come in, I mean, just think about a dating scenario. I mean, the first time you meet somebody and you walk up and all you do is start talking about yourself. Do they really like that?
Yeah, that's such a turn on. Yeah.
It doesn't work real well. It doesn't work real well. But then because of the environment that we live in with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, email, Skype, all of these things, we are constantly inundated, number one, with a bunch of information, and number two, attempting to talk about us, attempting to put ourselves out there. So many sales organizations don't even have the tools on how to train their teams, how to have a conversation to drive what we would call a vision match or an alignment in an agreed upon outcome. And without that, you end up with salespeople just walking in going, hey, we got this really cool thing. You should buy it. You don't want it? Okay, great. I'll go to the next one.
That's right. Well, you mentioned paper cups, and I can't think of anything more commoditized than that. But I mentioned things like web design, which many people wouldn't think, well, that's not commoditized. Yes, it is. Graphic design. There's so many things. So when you're in a commodity market like that, other than price, what are some of the things that you try to teach clients to do to make themselves stand out?
It's really understanding what you bring to the table that is unique. So we go through this process with our clients on competitive differentiation, and it doesn't matter how commoditized you are. Let's take, for example, I don't know the paper cup example as well. Let's take pill casings.
All right.
So you take pill casings. They're the little, melt in your mouth things that deliver the pills, right? Not the medication itself, but these are little, dissolvable elements that help. They're delivery devices for the medication. Now, most people wouldn't think that there's a way to differentiate those pill casings. However, turns out when you dive into it, some of them dissolve faster than others based on consumption, what else is in the stomach, which impacts the efficacy of the drug that's being delivered. Some of them are made with organic materials, some aren't, which can be a differentiator as well. So it's finding a couple of things that really differentiate you, and then more importantly, backing into what problems does a prospect or customer have to admit exist for them to give a crap about your differentiators. And by doing that, we then can ask those probing problem questions like, hey, have you ever wondered about the efficacy of delivery as a result of, the rate at which your pill casings, dissolve in the human body? We have had some complaints in the past about, or maybe it's taste or, oh, okay, well, would you love a solution that was consistent in its efficacy or delivery of the medication? Would you like something that was made from organic materials? Yeah, that would be great if we could get it. What kind of benefit do you think that would provide? Well, it would allow us to differentiate our medications even further in the marketplace and things like that. So it's really less about us believing that we're differentiated, then understanding we have everybody has one or two or three things that makes them different. They may not be huge, but they have a tendency to lead with that, rather than think about all of the myriad of problems that those things can actually solve, and seeing if you can get the other individual to agree that they have those problems and need them solved. So it's a slight shift. It's a very subtle mental shift, but it is also 100% focused on uncovering and getting the buyer to tell you exactly what the problems are, and then have them tell you what kind of impact it would have as a result.
Good. Another thing I've found, Chad, in my experience, is that sometimes I will, if I really do a good job of helping a customer uncover their pain and then help craft a vision with them. Let's say they came to me and said, we need social media marketing in the worst way, and I start asking probing questions. Why? What's the reason why? Well, because we're doing a lousy job of it. Okay. What do you mean by that? Well, we're not doing anything. All right. Well, what's the outcome of that? Well, and then you find out it's not a problem because they're not doing it. It's because their competitors are making them look bad, or whatever the real reason is. Right. And you go, that's great. You know what? But guess what? Company B over there probably has more resources than you, more money than you, interns, whatever they have. And by the way, even though I'm an expert on this, I might tell you, it doesn't look like you need social media to start with. Right. Maybe you need a new website, because I looked at that and it's awful. And some of the other things you told me, you're not doing email marketing right, or whatever. I might steer them in a different direction. And if I'm not the best provider for that, I'm going to do that prospect a disservice if I just try to sell them something I'm not good at. But what I have found is a lot of times they'll say, that's really refreshing to hear. Thank you so much. They'll go hire somebody else to do, one thing, and then they'll come back to me a year later, a couple years later. I used to have a saying, they all come back. But if you don't run people off by being that feature seller, running in the door going, hey, we sell widgets, this widget, that widget, you need this widget. And then they say, really, I don't think I do, actually. Yes, you do. Right. That's not cool, because you might make the short-term sale, but you'll probably end up with a lot of people with bad taste in their mouth, thinking that you're the, classic used car salesman. You just sold them the bill of goods. They paid you $5,000 for a website when they really could have used something else. What do you think about that? Is that a problem that you see with sales teams, or what other common problems you see with sellers and sales teams these days?
Yeah, I think it's a great summary of it, right? People walk in, they say, hey, I got this cool thing. You don't want it, they walk out. Whereas a true relationship is about helping someone else achieve their objective. It may be that they're focused on something right now you can't help with. Or, as in that example that you provided, you might look at it and say, you're looking at the wrong thing. You want to look over here. That type of trust and credibility and rapport is invaluable. They will remember you. They will remember that you were focused on making sure they came out with the best outcome for their organization, maybe understood a different perspective. And so that requires the ability to have a conversation. And it also requires the confidence in oneself and in the strength of your pipeline to be able to say, hey, we're not a fit right now, right? The law of scarcity, we're not a fit right now. But when you're ready to do this, give me a call, because we can definitely help. And there's a bunch of other things we can help with as well. So that's one of the problems, right? We train, organizations train salespeople about how cool they are. They unleash them on the world and then wonder why people are saying, hey, you need this widget, right? Another problem that we see is, and this isn't anything new, this is extremely, it's kind of old school even. People are scared of their pipeline. They want to have everything that they can in the pipeline because they think quantity makes them feel comfortable. It's almost a substitute for quality. Whereas the most successful sales teams that I have seen are aggressively DQing opportunities. Now, I don't mean throwing them away. I don't mean not talking to them again. I mean just owning up to, the individuals I would normally sell to, they're not focused on something I can help them with right now. So I'm going to put them on the back burner. And I'm going to let them go into maybe it's a marketing drip, or I've got some kind of sales drip or campaign. It might be those things, right? But it's not holding on to something just to have this blown up pipeline that's unpredictable. It's a huge problem that we see, and getting comfortable with that is part of what we work with the organizations on.
Got it. Now, what about technology? Can that be a huge crutch or deterrent? What do you see with that? Yeah.
I love
I mean,
that
people
question.
like, hey, let's get another shiny object and blast people all day long.
Yeah. So if technology were going to solve the human-to-human interaction problem, it would have solved it by now. We've got more than enough tech out there, and there's some great technology that will help us be more efficient. But it should all be viewed through an eye of driving towards a meaningful conversation and connection, which then becomes a human-to-human problem. Right? You need a CRM. You need some kind of record. You need something. We're all trying to prospect and work with so many companies. You need something that's going to be your memory. You need something that's going to allow you to analyze your data, what's working, what's not. Tools like Outreach, SalesLoft, Inside Sales, or Zant. All of those platforms that do the automation of the outreach, they're helpful. They provide us data on what works, what doesn't, but they're not a replacement for that human-to-human connection, and they're not a replacement for understanding somebody else's perspective and working to align towards that. They are enablers, but it doesn't in the end solve the human-to-human challenge that we have. A lot of people will hide. A lot of sales teams will hide behind the tech. Oh, I sent 1,000 emails out. Yeah, well, what was your response rate? Well, less than 1%. Okay, was that an effective use of your time? Right. So it's to me, it's a balance. It's a balancing act. I like to say, we do have technology components of our solution that people can purchase, but at the heart, we're a behavioral framework. How do you help sales teams consistently have those conversations across the organization to drive more predictable results?
Good. I think that's so important, Chad, because like you said, technology only gets you so far. If you're a pure e-commerce play, maybe that's all you need.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game. Blast it out to enough people and you do the percentages. And if I just get X percent, I'm going to be golden, right? But when you're doing longer sales cycle selling of, complicated services and things like that, yeah, eventually, as quickly as possible, really, you need to transition away from just technology to being on a Zoom call with somebody or having access directly to that person's inbox, right? And we all are victims of these automation systems that are so easy to input, thousands of names and start blasting out. And your boss is going, yeah, what does it look like, Chad? Yeah, I'm great. I just, like you said, I just sent out 400,000 emails and I got 2% response rate. Yeah. And you also pissed off about 50% of those people at least, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I love getting these. They make me smile. It's like the fourth one in the queue. And it's like, hey, this will be the last email, Brandon, insert name here. I'm like, you haven't tried one time to customize this to make me think that you spent 2 seconds actually looking at my website or digging on my LinkedIn page or anything, right? They're just following a script. So I think that is definitely a deterrent. On the other hand, you mentioned a couple of tools, SalesLoft and some other ones. Are there some that you just, couldn't live without, that you're really crazy about from a technology perspective?
I don't know that any one piece of tech. I mean, LinkedIn is great, I think, for all the reasons that everybody would be familiar with. So that's one that I use, and I use it to actually feed my head and stay more on top of what's going on out there. But I use it for connections and truly networking. In terms of if you think of a sales, stack, I don't know that there's an individual piece of tech that just makes me jump up and down. But if I break it down, what I would say is whether you're using HubSpot or Salesforce or some other type of CRM from a sales, customer relationship management, you need that. You need to have some element of understanding what interactions you've had, what's working, what's not, what they have, that type of stuff. I would also say you need a source of truth, right? Which is going to be more about your data. So some people use ZoomInfo to pull data for prospecting. Some people use, Discover.org owns them now, but those types of things, right? You need some type of, and it could be your own CRM, depending on how old and how well cultivated the data in it is. But I need some information, some gasoline to feed my prospecting engine or my account management engine. And then you need some type of tool set that allows you to track what works for you through each of the channels that you may be using to prospect and or sell through, whether it be social engagement, whether it be picking up the phone, whether it be email, whether it be even networking, something that allows you to capture enough data so you can understand where you're the most proficient and what areas you could personally work on to up your game so you have some type of data analysis. I kind of break the sales tech stack into those three areas. And there's a whole bunch of other cute little add-ons. But again, not anything that just jumps out at me as something that I can't live without.
Good deal. Well, if people want to know more about value selling and how they could take advantage of your programs, where would they go for more information, Chad?
First step would be to follow me on LinkedIn. It's just at Chad Sanderson or /IN/Chad Sanderson, or shoot me an email, just chad.sanderson@valueselling.com.
Excellent. And then once they get past COVID, they're going to have to take a trip out to Colorado, of course, to visit the home office, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that. Now, COVID, I'm sure, like you said early in the conversation, definitely had an impact. But I imagine you guys do a ton of virtual training. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've always done some percentage of our business has been virtual. What we did when March happened was that everything in March kind of pushed out a little bit. So what we did instead of panic was we actually invested in completely redesigning our virtual offering. So